Well, I have just turned on the recording. It is 7:30. So I call to order the Board of Trustees meeting for the Village of Riverwood scheduled for September 1st. This meeting is being held electronically pursuant to the Open Meetings Act 5 Illinois Statutes 120/7. May I have a roll call, please?
Trustee Chamberlain?
Here.
Trustee Clayton?
Here.
Trustee Goldstein?
I'm here.
Trustee Haber?
Here.
Trustee Hollander?
Here.
Trustee Jamerson?
Here.
President Norris?
Here, all board members are present. We have a quorum. First item of business is approval of minutes. First, the minutes from the public hearing of August 18th, 2020. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none.
Just one. It's no, sorry.
Okay. Then hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do a second? Daphne, did you hear a second?
I did not.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Chamberlain? Trustee Chamberlain?
You're muted, Cheryl.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton?
Aye.
Trustee Goldstein?
Aye.
Trustee Haber?
Aye.
Trustee Hollander?
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson?
Aye.
All right, next item of business is the Board of Trustees minutes from August 18th, 2020. Madam Clerk, I believe you said there were two changes.
Yes, Trustee Chamberlain had a few corrections. Cheryl Brightkoff moved to Lori Brightkoff, and then additions around the bike path primarily. The trustees discussed, and there's some wording added. Everything is verified that it was in the original transcript. Would you guys like me to read through a few of the bullet points? It's just a little bit more clarity.
I think if there's that much, we should hear it.
Okay, so the professional bike path plan is written. She wants professional bike stricken and path plan created by a professional firm added, which identifies where the new path should be built. Addition, differences between our current safety paths and a larger bike path. Addition, how long it may be before the county builds a bike path on. There's a sentence in there now, whether a temporary plan should be created. Addition, while people are using the path more. A addition of the need for a, before comprehensive, addition maintenance plan for the paths, addition that includes Riverwoods Road and other areas, and just adding Deerfield Road in the whether the Deerfield Road path should be decommissioned.
And you checked those were correct. So do I have a motion to approve?
Hold on, sorry. So then I also have a addition by Chief Dano, just clarifying that he also mentioned the Riverwoods, I'm getting up here, Riverwoods PD was 5th in the average DUI arrests per officer under the police report. And Trustee Hollander found a great correction that under the motion for the ordinance, there was a date correction, changing it to January 1 of 2022. And that's all.
Then noting those changes, do I have a motion for approval with those changes?
So moved.
Second.
All right, further
Discussion.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
I'd like to read those changes because it was very hard to follow
Okay.
that through. So I would suggest personally that this should be deferred to the next meeting so we all have an opportunity to review those.
I agree. Certainly if one of you feels that, I think those were enough. I think they're fine, but in its minutes, I don't mind putting them over one. So the chair rules that we will continue that as a point of order. Board of Trustees, next would be the Board of Trustees Executive Session Minutes from July 21st, 2020. I think those went around to date. Mr. Clayton?
I'm not sure, but I don't believe that Chief Dano and Pat Glenn attended that meeting.
No, they did not. So that's a correction. Any other corrections? Hearing none, then do I have a motion for approval of the executive session minutes from July 21st, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those are roll call, please. Sorry.
It's okay. Trustee Chamberlain,
Aye.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
Trustee Goldstein,
Aye.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
Trustee Hollander,
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
All right, then the Board of Trustees executive session minutes from August 8th, 2020. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the executive session minutes from August 8th, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Chamberlain,
Aye.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
Trustee Goldstein,
Aye.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
Trustee Hollander,
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
And I just want the record to show that's August 18th, 2020.
You're right. Thank you. All right, Director of Community Services report. Russ, you're muted. Russ, you're muted. There you
Okay,
go.
I unmuted. Okay. Sorry. Vivian, with the help of Susie, was able to resurrect our monthly report. And so everybody should have a copy of that for July and August with all the permits, inspections, incomes. So we think this is pretty close to what was given before. If there's something missing, let us know. And we'll try to add something else to it. But right now, this is what they found on the computer, and I think it all adds up, and it looks pretty good. So if anybody has any questions or anything, just let me know.
My mistake was I only forwarded August. I did not attach
July.
July to this. I'll forward that to everyone later.
Okay. So, well, July was very skimpy anyways because nothing much was getting done. So, but August we made up the difference in it. So it's hopefully our monies by the end of the year should come up a lot more. But we'll see. I got a new house coming in, so they got a couple of additions people are asking about. So they're still building, which is good. So we will see what happens from here on out. Other than that, we cleaned up some loose ends with some with a flag, with the garden plaque. Is that about it, John? I think that's about all we did there.
I think that covers it pretty much.
Yep. So that's about all.
Pardon me, are there any questions? All right, then, hearing none, Plan Commission report.
I don't know if Lori is here with us, but we have a Plan Commission meeting on Thursday, and I think we copied all the trustees on the packet of materials that we got out to the Plan Commission. So you're there, you can participate in our discussion.
Can you confirm, just wave your hands if you did get them, because I want to make sure. Okay, thank you.
That's it for the Plan Commission.
Okay, Treasurer's report, we don't have one. Consultants report, Gowalt Hamilton.
Nothing that's not on the agenda.
All right, Village Attorney's report.
It's coming up later, but I might as well break the news now. We're not probably in a position to approve the 2020 program or the bond ordinance. And I'll explain the reasons why unless you want me to wait till later. The residents on, I think one of the residents is a contractor, has friends in the business, and they felt that they could get a bid that was lower than the bids that the village got. The village bids, we had 6 bidders and they came in. It's of course in Pat's letter. And the low bidder is someone that's done work in the village before, often is the low bidder for end of the season work. But the difference that the other contractor gave to the residents was significant enough that they felt that they might want to proceed privately without getting bonds. I've tried to explain before that when we issue bonds, it has to be a village administered project. For one thing, for example, I doubt that the other contractor's bid uses prevailing wage. And so we'd basically have to redo the contract and essentially have them come through the bid process. And then they'd probably be back at what we were at anyway. And I think the residents, besides the discrepancy in the contract cost, they also, at least some of them, I was told, were concerned about the cost of, the village itself with the engineering supervision and fees like that. And so we spent a little bit of time trying to explain that, there's a lot of process involved when the village gets involved. We do go out there, we do inspect, we do verify quantities, we do a lot of things that they may not get done just when they have their driveway paved. So I think the residents are still mulling this and debating this. I think, half probably, my guessing, would want to proceed right now with the village project as it's been presented to them. And maybe they were listening to the others who were objecting. And I'm told there are a couple who really don't have the means or don't want to be paying the full cost up front. That's the disadvantage of going privately. They can't pay it out over 10 years. No one objects to the interest rate. It was a favorable rate. We were in a position, we had where everything worked out basically to go forward with the bond ordinance and the bids tonight, but my suggestion is we wait until the second meeting in September, hope the weather cooperates with us until we have a decision from them that that's what they want to do.
And any questions for the village attorney?
I have a question.
Yes, Mike.
Bruce, if we don't go forward with the project, with the village administering the job, how are we going to recover the costs that we've spent thus far in the bidding process, drafting the bond ordinance, etc.?
We just levy a tax. So there's an SSA that's been formed. This has not happened to us before, where we've explained the process many times and gotten this close, and then at the last minute to get cold feet. I think probably has to do with the unique constellation of people and residents there who have some feel for the area and feel like that they could administer this work themselves. So I guess I'll get back to the board with it in 2 weeks and we'll see where we stand. But I've done about half the work that I would do. I only did the bond ordinance. I didn't do everything else. I started to rough out some things. The whole process of getting them formed is, it takes 3 or 4 months. And they may find other uses for the special service area. They can do an annual maintenance levy like other SSAs. So, and I don't know which way this is going to go. I haven't been in touch with all the residents, just a few, and I can't really gauge the sentiment.
What I'm thinking though is in the future, when a particular group comes to us and wants to contemplate the formation of an SSA, it would appear to me that we might want to take a deposit, so to speak, for the work that has to be done just in the preliminary stage, so that if they decide not to go forward, you're not out in the cold and the village is picking up those costs.
True, and even if there were one that were formed and they want to change their terms and we go through cost and then they don't, we need to make sure we do have that mechanism to be able to recoup the cost. That's something I think the board's made clear. Yes, Henry?
Clear, are you saying that they did not go ahead and form the SSA, or they chose to form the SSA but chose not to use the village's process to construct the road?
They chose to form the SSA. It's formed.
Okay.
But the second prong was using the SSA mechanism to issue bonds.
Okay.
And that's the part that they're thinking they might be able to do privately.
The prior conversation to the fact they may not have formed the SSA, but they do have a formal SSA. Okay.
Rick?
So,
Now you're
so
still muted.
technically, Bruce, we could charge them, we could levy a tax for the money that's been expended to date.
Yes.
So that part I think we're covered, but this could be a situation like we just did, where somebody says they want us to modify the ordinance, and we could have somebody doing a lot of work, and I want to be able to be sure that we can recoup even
I mean,
then.
you know, there are residents there who are not, this is not their usual daily fare. They're trying their best to understand the process. They're trying to communicate with all the other residents. And I'm sure that, you know, some of them feel like they've gotten caught in the middle of something they wish they never gotten caught in, and that, you know, they were volunteering to get this done. You know, it only takes, you know, one opposing voice who raises questions that makes everyone start to question, well, maybe there's some other way to do it. I still don't, I mean, if they work through all the issues, I will sort of be surprised it's to coordinate with a project like that, that the offer that someone made to do all of the work for free, you know, the administration and the supervision, I don't know if that'll happen. You know, I don't know if it's an apples to apples. We've sent them copies of our bid specs, so I kind of doubt that it's a true apples to apples comparison of what the work is. And we included, and I explained that we included amounts for contingency, which may not get spent. And we actually would have a mechanism like we did with some of the other SSAs to abate taxes, to use up some of that surplus if it resulted. But the other bid, of course, didn't include any contingency. So as soon as you get out there, if something happens, that price may not hold either. You know, so some people understand this, I think, and I think it's just playing out behind the scenes. We'll have to wait.
Well, this isn't the first time we've had it. If you remember, there've been a couple of these before, and as they get into it a little farther, they suddenly realize that maybe it's a little pie in the sky for what they think they can do other than we're doing. But
So can I just ask one more question?
certainly, Rick.
Do we have an idea of what we've spent in legal fees and engineering fees roughly to date on this?
I couldn't tell you as I'm sitting here. Bruce, do you have an idea?
You know, I probably have $1,500 of time before I, you know, put in time for whatever I've done on the bond stuff. I don't know what the engineering costs have been up to date, but I'm just going back all the way to March.
Yeah, there's significantly more than that in engineering. I can get with my finance folks. We charge everything to a specific project number, so it's easy to sort out.
Yeah, I can tell you tomorrow, but
It's not
I
critical.
would guess probably 10,000 would not be an unreasonable number to think.
No, and there's another issue with, you know, we should, as this process has evolved, we throw into one contract multiple SSAs plus the village work. And this year, Kingswood is the bulk, it's the biggest piece of the contract. So we just need to be cognizant that if Kingswood backs out, we can't award that contract, take out the Kingswood work, and then expect Chicagoland to honor their remaining unit prices either.
It's not the best news, but again, hopefully we can move through it. Cheryl, you're muted still.
I know. And are these folks aware that we would still intend to charge them for the work done so far?
Well, you know, this came up only in the last 2 days, so I haven't had. It's been a very fast-moving situation, but we will make it clear to them.
Bruce, you had more? Any other questions for the council? Okay, then, no ecologist report this evening, police report.
The police activity is in the packet, and that's all I have until later.
Any questions for the chief? Okay, information items. One, it really should have virtually no difference on how things perform, but I will not be in the village hall for the meeting in 2 weeks. I will be out of town. The village clerk will be here, so we'll still be in compliance, and I should be able to conduct the meeting. The other item we have is the streetlight list that Trustee Jamerson has been working out with Commonwealth Edison as to which ones we have, who has responsibility, etc. Rick, you want to say a couple of words about that?
Well, yeah, I was kind of expecting you to put the list in the packet, which is.
Yes, and I intended to, Rick. It's my
Get
fault.
there.
If you want, we can send it around, but I apologize.
Well, I would like it to go around because I think it's important for people to understand what streetlights there are in the village that the village maintains and for. This whole thing came up because I asked the question about the streetlight right outside of Village Hall that is constantly going on and off because it needs to be maintained by ComEd. And every time they come out, it's on, and every time they leave, it goes off. And it's a high pressure sodium light instead of the newer LEDs, which take less energy and have basically no maintenance. So in conversation with our ComEd rep, he sent me a list of lights in the village, which was not all the lights in the village. And I actually physically drove around the village to find all the streetlights that we have. And I added about 8 more to their list. So, but the question becomes, and I'm not necessarily a streetlight proponent, but there are streetlights, it appears, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted the list to be made public to everybody. It appears that most of the streetlights that are in existence are at intersections of public roads. So, for instance, there's one at Lake Cook and there's 2 at Lake Cook and Saunders. Both happen to be in Northbrook on their side of the intersection. But Riverwoods Police basically maintain that intersection. That's probably not the right word, based on what Bruce was saying. It's our jurisdiction. So it's to our benefit that those streetlights are on our bill, not Northbrook's bill. And they have been. But, you know, there's a light at Hoffman, there's a light at up on Duffy, and I can't think of the name of the street off the top of my head, but they're all private, they're all public streets. And the question is, why is the intersection at Hoffman Lane and Deerfield Road more deserving of a street light the village pays for than the one at that goes to any other street on Deerfield Road? Do we want streetlights at every intersection? I don't know. And I'm not advocating for that, but I think it's something the board should look at, because there's a lot of intersections that are very dark at night. And that's not going to change. So if we decide we want more streetlights, we have to go through the new business desk at ComEd, which is not a huge process, but it's different than the process. I couldn't add it to the list that they had because they're basically replacing streetlights one for one. Streetlights are going to be replaced in 2021. They pushed us up on the schedule. We were originally scheduled for 2023, but because we asked and we don't have that many, they pushed us up to 2021. So that part's good news, but I would like the board to review the list, John. So if you could please send it around.
Yes, I will get it out. I apologize for not
and let the
including it.
board look at it. I think it's an interesting list to look at. And they're not all, they're not all public intersections. There are a couple that are private intersections. And once again, I have no idea why lights got put where they put. They had to be requested. ComEd didn't just put them up. So
from past dealings with residents and lights, I will say that putting lights in is something we better talk to a lot of villagers about, because a lot of people get very upset with the idea of lights in the village.
I understand.
I know you do, Rick.
When you put the list out, could you also put a map up and just put a dot where the lights are, some sort of signal as to where the lights are on a map. Just having a list of streets, it becomes a little more difficult for us to visualize it.
Sure, I will put together a map with the streetlights on it.
Thank you.
Henry, couldn't you have asked that before he pointed out that I didn't send the list around?
Well, that was the reason you didn't send a list around, and you wanted to make this better.
There you go. Thank you, Henry.
All right, thank you, John.
No, I wish it were the reason, but it clearly wasn't. Actually, Rick, you gave it to me too early in the period.
Actually, John, instead of you sending the list out, why don't you let me put a map together?
Okay.
And I will put the map together with the address list and send them out to everybody. I'll
That's
copy
great.
you. Then you
I
don't
appreciate
have
it.
to
Thank
do
you.
the same. We don't have to send it twice.
Okay. It doesn't look like we have any visitors in the sign up. Who's on here? Bruce Dano. We don't have any emails. We did
No
have
emails.
one resident who called and asked Katie if it was worth tuning into Zoom to listen to the board meetings. And I made her lie and say yes, but obviously the person didn't believe her. So moving on to action items. A, discussion and possible approval of path recommendation plan and contracts. I think everybody got Pat's email with the bid from Wharton, which I'm very surprised to see is small enough that I could have approved it myself at $3,500. You noted, I hope in the report, that what we went through was Riverwoods Road was looked at for both safety and maintenance to avoid additional maintenance cost in the future. While Deerfield Road, we did basically the safety point of view, realizing that it's going to be replaced. So we don't want to do more than is necessary. Pat, how much do you think would be the additional cost for the soil, et cetera, that was left out of this bid that we still would need to do?
I would suggest that the village or that the board authorizes up to $5,000 so we can take care of the couple other safety items noted in our report.
So the big thing is that A, we're going to make sure that from now on, when Pat does a pavement assessment for a road, someone in his office will be looking at the bicycle paths as well. No guarantee that we won't have a problem later in the year, but that still will be better than we've been doing to make sure, especially when we see that it's this cost. Riverwoods Road, for certain, I think we took the approach that that does need an ongoing preventative maintenance, because I do think 10 years is a reasonable guess for how long that will still be there. I don't see changes happening sooner. But we really didn't think that it was a good an idea to try and do that much to Deerfield Road. It does need to be safe though. So hopefully what you saw in the photographs and the reports makes clear what the scope of the work would be. I'll let Pat answer any questions. And then the final item was the snow removal, which Russ and I talked about that just this morning, that we did that many years ago when we first put the extended path in on Riverwoods. We did it for a year or two. There weren't that many people using it, and we got a lot of complaints. Cheryl shaking her head, so she's, well, I'm telling you what the village did. You may disagree with why we thought we were doing it, Cheryl, but.
No, actually, I have a fact correction there, not a policy correction. So we did do snow removal more recently. I think at least 3 years worth, and as recently as 2018. And if I recall, I know for sure we had gotten a significant number of calls about requesting snow removal. And I believe, John, you directed Rob to have the people who are removing our snow otherwise to also remove on the path. But I know it was done at least a couple of years, but I think even more than that. And the reason I think it's important to note that is because it was fairly recently we may again have requests because people may remember that we've done it in the past.
Well, I'm not remembering it. I'll let anybody else chime in. I do remember what Russ did. Mike Haber, you may remember that too, that we did it for a while, but we did stop. And certainly if the board wants to, we can at least talk to the snow removal company and see what it would cost, and then you can make a knowledgeable decision. But we sort of thought taking
That
the
was one of my
path leaving it
questions.
alone. But
I think if we look back at the bill from the snow removal company, we could easily determine that because it was fairly recent.
okay, well, I'll double check on it. That's easier than that. Rick, is that
So
your hand going up?
It is. And so I have can I ask some questions?
Sure, certainly.
Okay. So so first of all, I'm surprised it's only $5,000 for Deerfield Road.
Me too.
And I realize we're only covering the trip hazards, but that still doesn't seem like, based on all the pictures, it doesn't seem like that's hitting all the high spots. But besides that, I'd like to talk about the one on Riverwoods Road in particular, because that one's not going to get theoretically replaced in 2024 like the one along Deerfield Road. And my understanding is that we are able to use MFT funds for these types of project. And I understand that the $5,000 isn't worth the paperwork to do it for the patching on Deerfield Road. But so this is my question, are engineering costs to design a new path along Riverwoods Road something that MFT funds could be used for?
The general answer would be no. Pat, you can answer it more clearly, but it takes probably more money to get it qualified to where we might get the engineering, I think, than the cost of the engineering.
Yeah, engineering, whether it's streets, maintenance, new path maintenance, is all MFT eligible. It requires, then the engineering agreement has to go through IDOT, so it's one additional step in the process of getting MFT approval. And we know that there's essentially a hole in the MFT right now. So, and I'm not trying to set policy. I'm saying the way it's laid out right now, we're pretty much saving up our MFT for the resurfacing of Saunders Road. That's a $700,000+ maintenance project that's coming up. I've got it scheduled for 2023. So the answer is yes, absolutely. We can use MFT funds for engineering. Next year, I have programmed resurfacing Hoffman Lane. So it's a policy decision for the board of where do you want to spend the limited MFT funds you have. But certainly engineering is an eligible expense.
Well, so the reason I asked is because it seems that there are grants available for shovel-ready projects at times. There may not be one available right now, but there have been in the past. Lincolnshire just had a big article in Cranes, or not in Cranes, in some patch or something like that, about how they spent, they redid the path along Riverwoods Road, they redid the intersection of Half Day and Half Day. They did something else, and it was all with this grant money. So my question is should we think about spending some of those MFT funds to do the engineering for that path? So if a grant does come available, we can put it out there and get that path rebuilt properly. The way I read the report, there's sections that are 90% failure rate, right now, which means that 10% of the path is usable, or is the pavement is 10%, have 10% of its life left. I just think that, we just got through patching Hoffman last year, right?
Well, it's, you know, that's where we programmed it based on our 2020 pavement assessment. We'll go out in the spring and we'll assess all the pavement and paths again. And we'll see what kind of condition it's in. You know, this, there is some subjectivity to it for certain.
Well, Rick, you're also bringing up a point that Pat and I've talked about, and I told him to put together some ideas, because there are a number of federal projects that you've got to have the phase 1 engineering done ahead of time, but then we get 100% on everything else. So that may be a wise direction to go to get these shovel-ready projects. And again, Pat, you can correct me, but I didn't think we could use MFT just for engineering without work that was going to be done otherwise.
No, all
Okay.
engineering for MFT eligible work is also MFT eligible.
Okay, Cheryl, you had a question, and then Henry.
Yeah, my understanding previously is grants are unavailable for a path unless it's at least 8 feet wide. Has that changed?
I would imagine not, but Pat, you may have.
Right. So, you know, Lincolnshire specifically, they through the Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program. So all their designs had to go through IDOT local roads, and you're correct that if it's a bike path or a shared use path that you're spending the money on, that has to meet the minimum standards for shared use paths, and that's 8 feet wide with 2 foot clear zones and all that. Which, as we all know, is another little problem here, and why some of our paths sort of dodge in and around things, as people have noted. So, well, but sidewalks are eligible, MFT eligible as well. So if we call it a sidewalk, but then we have to be careful about how much bicycle traffic we allow on it technically. So, I mean, it's a catch-22 in all too many ways. Henry, you had.
Yeah, I just want to correct the misimpression. Using MFT funds for engineering products or paths or sidewalks, it just means that we don't have the money available for the roads. So it's fungible. We spend all the MFT funds that we have over time, and it doesn't make any difference where you allocate the dollars, Rick. So,
well, I would only say this, though, that depending on how that runs in the future, and I think our recommendation was only as to this year, not necessarily going through, but in the future, we should always consider whether MFT funds can be used for a particular project rather than general funds. And I think we'd all say that.
Right, but it is spent each, over time. It isn't that we're leaving money on the table.
I understand that, Henry, but my point was that, especially since we're in a deficit mode this year, that, and probably will be next year based on some of the financial information that we've been given, and maybe the year after that, for all I know, that it might behoove us to spend some MFT money that we have now to do the engineering for it. And so that if a grant does pop up, that we can use that grant. Yep. We can have the documents ready and have a shovel-ready project so that we can apply for it. It doesn't do us any good to sit on MFT funds.
Right.
If there's a grant that pops up that we can't, take advantage of. That's my point. I get that, it's pay me now or pay me later. I get that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, I think we're all in agreement that we want to look as much as we can at being ahead of the game on having our engineering done, and if we can get money with MFT to use it, it's probably a good thing. Okay.
I just have one comment.
Yes, Mike.
With regard to this, I totally agree that it would be always wise to bank engineering so that we would have shovel-ready projects. But I think we should only have shovel-ready projects that the board is committed on actually doing, whether or not we get a grant.
Oh, you'll have to approve the engineering. So you're going to be approving the project, I would assume, when you approve the engineering.
Yeah, I mean, I think if a project is worthy of something that we need in the village, if we think it's something that we really need and we want for the village residents, then I think it's worthy of doing engineering for it. But just to do it because we think that maybe we'll get a grant, I'm not sure that's the right approach as far as I'm concerned.
But we have a safety path right now along Riverwoods Road that is in failure mode.
I'm totally in favor of fixing that path.
That needs to be fixed. And I mean,
I-
you've been championing the paths. Cheryl's been championing the
Gentlemen,
I
paths.
agree.
And you know, here's our opportunity to at least get a shovel-ready project. I
Okay.
get your point. If we're not going to put a safety path through Thorn Meadow or Thorn Gate, then we shouldn't bother putting the engineering. I get that.
I think it's implicit in approving the engineering that it's a project we would think worthy of going forward and is not questionable.
Yeah, I think we're,
That goes without saying.
Just to give the board kind of the, an order of magnitude perspective on this. You know, when we patched, we did a pretty substantial patching program on both paths in 2016. And the construction cost for that was right around $30,000. I believe the big one that's staring us in the face is Saunders Road.
Yes.
And, you know, it's reasonable people can disagree. We did put Saunders Road in for a surface transportation program, you know, for the federal grant program. Of course, those funds have been greatly reduced in Lake County, so we didn't make the cut for that federal program. The phase one engineering for Saunders Road, as far as phase one studies go, is relatively straightforward. And then I think the board should give consideration to the likelihood, is the federal government likely to come through with another stimulus program like they did back in 2008? And to me, that's where you want to be prepared with a project that is on your books. You're going to do it one way or another, and you've already got, you know, you've advanced the ball on the project. So that's my suggestion, just because it's a big project. We're going to have to do it at some point anyway, and it's a relatively modest engineering investment to get it to a place where it is, you know, as they say, shovel ready. And we can have discussions about, you know, new paths and other projects like that, but Saunders Road's coming, and I think it's the one that we really need to focus on how we're going to get through that.
I think there are more than enough projects that we would all agree for certain need to be done that we can have the engineer work on ahead of time. I don't think there's a shortage of that. And I think we all agree we're not going to throw money out there. Gee, the engineer, we might do this. So I don't think that's a problem. So Rick, and then
One more question for Pat, and then I will mute myself for the rest of the night. Well, maybe not.
Promises.
Maybe not the whole night. So Pat, are you suggesting that we should go ahead and do the engineering for Saunders Road now?
I am. So if we're going to spend local funds / MFT funds, in other words, we're not going to spend federal funds, the phase one engineering is, I won't say it's wasteful. It's not required. We can move directly into phase two for MFT or local funded projects. The phase one is an additional step that makes the project eligible for federal funding and shows that you've advanced the ball on that. So it is an additional expense, and I can come up with I can give you some hard numbers maybe for the next meeting if you'd like. But what it comes down to is, do we think that there's going to be another program in the next couple of years that's going to inject a bunch of federal money into the existing programs? So of all the projects that were submitted in Lake County for surface transportation, there were maybe 40 of them. And 5 of them got funded, and Saunders Road is squarely in the middle. So if the feds put together a stimulus program and inject a whole bunch of money, this follows form from 2008. That's what they did, was they said, okay, here's all this additional money that we'll spend through the surface transportation program. And all of a sudden, those programs swelled. And Riverwoods benefited from that. We were able to get Saunders Road resurfaced. There was a lesson learned in that. That stimulus program went largely to just straight resurfacing programs. But, you know, I personally think that there will be some program that comes out there to put money for infrastructure. And you're always better off having phase one completed because nobody ever pays for phase one. That's always a local cost. And it does two things. It advances the project and it shows that the local agency has, you know, skin in the game, which always helps your scoring for those projects.
Which
So
is
I'm
what
just,
I want to get the price list for so that you guys can see what it cost and then figure if it's worth the risk of spending money that you might not get funded, but put you in the running. Mr. Clayton, and then I think we probably need to move.
Given the overhead cost, if you will, of applying for MFT fund approval, I think it's worthwhile for the board to consider whether they'd be willing to go forward on more than just the path down Saunders. If you could bundle several different projects together, if the board was willing to go ahead, certainly looking at how much it would cost to do the phase one engineering for a path down Portwine. I think given the campus and access to the campus would be another project that would be worthwhile considering as a board if we wanted to go forward. You know, I've been a proponent of the restoration, the path to the restoration area from the police department parking lot. I think that would be worthwhile to do it. And if it costs so much time and effort to go through the MFT approval process, then the board should consider if they want to do any of these other projects and bundle that in to go after the MFT approval, it seems to me.
Well, if you notice, that was part of what we had in our report, that this was to take care of an immediate problem, but there are more projects that should be prioritized, listed, et cetera, updating both that original plan and these. And frankly, I'm hearing tonight, we should also be listing roads. So Henry, that's yours too. So I guess we should be sitting down and just putting all of this together so the board can plan it farther ahead, because we're not going to have too much money. So we need to know where we want to spend it. And I think it's a reasonable thing to give you the information. So with that, unless we're going to talk specifically about the bike path, the safety path repairs and the $5,000 that's Pat's recommending, as long as we have it on the agenda, I would ask for a motion authorizing up to $5,000 for repairs of the two safety paths.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
All right. Further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Trustee Chamberlain,
Aye.
Trustee Clayton,
Aye.
Trustee Goldstein,
Aye.
Trustee Haber,
Aye.
Trustee Hollander,
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Rick, you were muted.
Trustee Jamerson.
Oh,
There you
sorry.
go.
You.
I told you I was going to mute myself for the rest of the night. What can I
I
tell you?
gotta say, you were honest, but I didn't say Simon Says unmute yourself. Okay,
Can you please tell me who made that motion?
Mr. Haber.
Okay, thank you.
All right, moving on then, item B, as long as we're talking about roads and maintenance, presentation of the 2020 street maintenance bid results and approval of recommended bid. Mr. Glenn?
sorry, I think based on our prior conversation, we want to hold this over to the next meeting.
See, I'm lucky. I've got a voiceover in the other room that tells me when I'm muted. Without objection, we will put that over, obviously. Okay, then item C, first reading of an ordinance amending the Riverwoods Village Code concerning the regulation of cannabis. Council or Chief, whichever one of you wants to go first.
Bruce, you're muted.
I need a Bruce or a Bruce to be speaking.
There, does that work?
Yes.
The chief and I have been working together. The new law that legalized some consumption of cannabis in some amounts made it necessary to back and examine, probably 6 or 7 different provisions in our code unfortunately, when you search for cannabis, you find it all over the place, and then you have to kind of see in what context it was being used. And we found a number of places that need to be amended. We found one more today that we were going over. So we're only looking for first reading, and at the next meeting, probably have a small red line with a couple more, another section where I found some changes that needed to be made. But essentially, we wanted to remove violations that couldn't be prosecuted in administrative court because they weren't violations anymore, and substitute them for violations that could be prosecuted because they comply with the new Cannabis Regulation and Tax Act. So in a nutshell, the key section says that the possession and use and sale and all these things of cannabis is illegal in the village, except to the extent it is authorized under this new act. Then the police can basically write a local violation for simple misdemeanor type offenses or civil. There's a number of matters that are just civil infractions, or they can elect to write a ticket under the state law. They've always had that option. For more serious matters, they would have to go under state law anyway. So that's just a brief summary. I don't know, Chief, do you want to pipe in with anything else?
No, I think you summed it up.
And I thought they came up with a great solution by just referring to state law so they don't have to change it every time, assuming there may be changes in the future.
You know, yeah, one of the things, if you see in the memo we provided, while the informal understanding is that cannabis is legalized, actually, when you look at the act in detail, some aspects of cannabis consumption are legalized, but many others are not. And so sometimes it's important to recall that there are still a number of things that can happen with cannabis, just as with alcohol, that could be a concern in the village.
So are there any specific questions or concerns from any board members? All right, if you do have any oh, yes, Henry.
I remember reading, I don't see it in the present notes, but I remember reading when you sent stuff out that there was a restriction being under the influence of cannabis while driving. Does that ring a bell to you?
Yes, that's accurate. It's
okay. Then my question is, how do you determine if one is under the influence?
So there are specific field sobriety tests that we perform on all DUIs. And there's some eye tests that you can do related to nystagmus and strabismus. But if I can never say that word, so you probably know it better than I do. But
you got it right.
But the bottom line is, if somebody appears to be impaired and they're not doing well on standard field sobriety tests, and the standard tests are really designed for alcohol, we would take them, we would have them blow into an instrument to determine if there's any amount of alcohol in their blood. And if it came back less than 0.08, or even if it came back where that's really less than 0.04, we would probably then take them to a hospital to have blood and urine taken. We can actually do urine at the police station and look for any other drugs that may be in their system, including cannabis. So it's hard to specifically say they're under the influence of cannabis unless you smell it in the car. I mean, that's obviously an indicator.
Henry, I think it goes back to what you and I knew when we were young for alcohol driving, that if the officer thought you were impaired, they took you in, but they don't have the breathalyzer. It's not as safe for the officer as it used to be.
They're actually working on, right now there's field testing for breath testing that we can do on the street. And they're actually working on a street test for marijuana, but they've been testing them, but nothing to great success yet.
Okay, I will point out too that that's a state violation anyway, so it's a little hard for us to be enforcing. Again, if the board does have anything during the week or the next 2 weeks, please feel free to send it to council so we can try to have it, because I would now ask if I can have a motion for first reading of an ordinance amending the Riverwoods Village Code concerning the regulation of cannabis.
So moved.
Second.
All right, further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Chamberlain.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Goldstein.
Aye.
Trustee Haber.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
All right, first reading is approved. All right, from earlier discussion, I would say that item D, an ordinance providing for the issuance of bonds, is being put over. Item E is definitely being put over because we don't have the correct legal description and agreed to yet. Item F is the approval of the severance agreement with Robert Durning. I forwarded copies to all of you. Those that I've had an opportunity to talk with have not had questions. There were a couple of typographical errors. I passed those on to council. For example, it referred to the union agreed to the severance, which of course was not correct. You also may have noted that the resignation was stated was immediate, and that would have been as of the 28th, yet the terms would contradict that, so we'll clean those things up. But is there any need to go into executive session for further discussion? If not, then I would ask for a motion to approve the settlement as set forth.
So move.
Second.
All right, further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Chamberlain.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Goldstein.
Aye.
Trustee Haber.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
All right, then. Thank you very much. No old business. Standing committee reports. Trustee Haber.
I don't have anything to report.
Thank you. Trustee Chamberlain.
I wanted to let everyone know that as a follow-up from the branding and education meeting, Ryan Schultz was able to forward to the village not only color guides that go along with our branding for the digital sign, but also backgrounds, and 4 different backgrounds that follow our branding guide for the different seasonal change colors. And that was what the Branding and Education Committee had in mind as far as use with the sign, more of a static sign. And this particular digital layout we can have our own background. And so Ryan was generous enough to provide that for us. And so the village now has that.
Okay, and it looks like Friday will be another meeting of the branding committee, I think. Is that right, Cheryl? Looks like everybody said yes, even David.
Yeah, either this Friday or next Friday, but probably this Friday.
Okay, did I hear somebody have a question? No? All right, Trustee
have a question.
Jamerson. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric.
So
Yes.
I have a question and then also a comment. My comment is that currently I noticed that we did change the messaging on the sign, on the electric sign on the corner, and if I remember correctly, it said there, it alerted people of our board meeting tonight, and then it also has some sort of messaging, and it's not verbatim, but it's warning our residents to basically lock their car doors.
Right, and we had also had it earlier this week pointing out the mosquito spraying and a few other items.
I haven't been down that way this week. But consider, and this is just my opinion, whether it's right or wrong, it's not for me to decide. I'm not really sure that we as a village should be advertising that we potentially have a problem with people breaking into our cars. I think that this is something that we should be communicating internally with our residents, inside the locker room, so to say, via email, via mobile communications, in some other way. I actually think that this is hurting our image, and people driving by are saying, hey, where are we? Oh, this is Riverwoods. They've got some nice cars. They've got a problem with people breaking in. So I would really reconsider that messaging. I think it's poor for our village, and I'd rather have different communication dealing with our theft and other
Noted,
problems.
noted.
Instead, I would actually
Discuss
put
that.
something more positive instead of something negative. And my question is, so I heard Trustee Chamberlain mention Ryan Schultz gave us some, images for the background of that sign. And what I would ask is, do we have a plan for the messaging that's going to be on that sign? And if we do have a plan throughout the year, is that something that can be shared with the board? Because I think that it's really important that whatever we're putting on the sign, I don't think it should just be branding. I just don't, or communications. I think we should all have the ability to voice our opinion, especially if it's something that's going out to the general public. I mean, anybody who drives down that road, not just our residents. So I actually think it's really important that we put more thought into this. Now that the sign is there, I think we got to put more thought into this.
Well, one, the chief and I are working on a list of standardized messages for things like road closed or high water, et cetera, because as you say, we don't want to be just doing it ad hoc every time. I know Cheryl has also been talking about that. So your point is well taken. We're working on getting together a list, and obviously it's not going to be a secret from anybody, and we'd be happy to get input once we give you something to work from. We don't expect you to be just working in the blank, but it is there. Yes, Rick?
I'm sorry. I knew I said I wasn't going to say anything more.
We'll give you a second chance.
And I apologize, but I have to disagree with Trustee Goldstein in the fact that you can't have 6 people trying to determine the messages that are going on that sign every time a new message needs to go up. You can't do that. It's not possible.
Rick, that won't happen, but I do think it's okay to let everybody have a shot at it.
That's what it sounded like he was asking for, that when we wanted to put when the village wanted to put a message up there, that all the trustees to review the message and comment on it and decide whether it was something we put up or not. If you want to get onto the committee that create a committee and be in charge of the committee, Eric, that's great. But I don't think you can, a committee of 6 people or more, because there would be more, that are going to be trying to determine what goes on that message sign is not, I don't think it's feasible.
Yeah, I may have said that. Let me just answer that. What I think we need is a plan for what is going to go on that message board.
That's what I heard.
That's really what I'm getting at. And I think that we all deserve, to take a look at that plan and give our input.
That's not even a matter of deserving. I assure you, I'd like to get it all because I think you all contribute things. Cheryl, it's your time. Go right ahead. Cheryl, yes, I said go ahead.
I didn't know you were talking to me.
Oh, it's the other Cheryl I was talking to.
I didn't know you said my name. Yeah, I had, when John had referenced that I had made comments, I knew that the mayor and the police chief were talking about what was going on the sign. And I had suggested that perhaps the Branding and Education Committee could help with putting together at least a policy or a guideline. We also happen to have messaging as far as things we were intending for our social media plan, which didn't quite happen yet. There was this thing called COVID that kind of got in the way. And it could incorporate some of those things. And my thought was that if we did that, then we could bring those guidelines to the board. And then of course, the specifics would be implemented by whomever was in charge of that, but that we would have guidelines developed.
The idea that you standardized format so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's not a whole lot of stuff up there to put stuff in, so you need to be thinking about how to say it succinctly. So, okay, anything else, Cheryl? All right, Rick, you've got to talk again. Sorry, you get a third shot.
No report.
Okay.
I have a question, John.
Yes. Go ahead.
There hasn't been a meeting of the campus committee, at least to my knowledge, recently, and I would wonder if we could get an update on the status of the campus project.
Oh, well, Thursday we're supposed to be walking around. Yeah,
Well,
Rick, go ahead.
I can give you a more or less update based on the emails that have been coming across to me. The things are going along well. Unfortunately, they're running now into issues with supply chain problems because of COVID. And the shelter is not probably going to be here in time for the theoretical end of the project in October. Although I highly doubt we're going to have a Halloween party this year, which is what we were shooting for. But the patio has been, the concrete's been poured for the patio. The curbs have been poured for the parking lot. It's ready to be, looks like it's ready to be asphalted to me. There are some issues with some stone, which is putting the mason behind. We will have, as John said, we have a site meeting on Thursday. And if you would like, I could more fully update the board at the next board meeting on the progress and what the expected completion date is.
So, and Mike, that's an in-person meeting. You're welcome to attend, but I understand why you might not want to with COVID, et cetera. So, yes, Mike, the other Mike.
As long as Trustee Jamerson mentioned the Halloween party, I think that we should actually start thinking about having a virtual Halloween party for our residents and actually try and figure out a way to deliver candy to the kids in the neighborhood, because we don't want them going door to door during COVID. Not that we have a great amount of kids who are actually going door to door, but I think we could probably get, if we get ahead of it, I think we might actually get some good PR from it by doing some kind of a virtual Halloween party. So maybe there can be a committee established to think about that, have kids register, get some donations of candy, deliver some of those goodies to the kids, and get some good PR out of it.
Daphne and I have already been working on that. Brushwood had somebody that contacted them that they put in touch with us as having a drive around Halloween party that we're looking at to see if they would work or whatever. Because as you say, Mike, I'm not counting on it. The chief and I were talking today about what do we tell people when they talk about hours, because we can't necessarily tell them they can't go, but we certainly probably want to discourage it. And it's one of those difficult choices, but I don't think we're going to have our normal party, so we need to think of what we can do. So, okay, Mr. Clayton, I think you're, oh, I'm sorry, Eric, you're next.
No report.
Okay. Henry?
Yeah, just, it's been several years since we've checked the wells in the village, and according to Pat, about 1/3 of our residents are on wells. So I've requested that we get a periodic report on the status of the aquifer in our wells. I didn't define periodic, but I think we should at least, in my mind, at least once a year find out whether the health of our wells. And I think Pat is contacting Mr. Schwal and going to pursue that. So that may be coming up in the next few times we meet. Is that correct, Pat?
Hey, I'm thinking, and Henry, you can jump in if you disagree, but it'll be a semi-scientific update. In other words, I would get with Jack, get his thoughts on wells around the village and what their levels have generally been. So more qualitative at this point, because everything that Jack tells me is there's simply, well levels are historically high, and I think we can work at the quality level as long as that's the case. And then as it goes forward, when things start getting lower, then perhaps a little more scientific about it.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Rick.
Didn't we used to have 4 or 5 residential wells that we had meters on or monitoring on, along with the one at the village hall, which no longer exists?
Yeah, so what
reported,
we had probably half a dozen airline installations and permissions from the owners to go out and take those airline readings. Then we got the automated well reader at Village Hall, and I think at that point we fell off of going to the various residences and monitoring their wells. And that might be something that we want to look into resurrecting. It's not at all a huge effort to take well measurements, and I think we could, distribute half a dozen of them around town and have Jack spend, 2 hours going around just taking those well levels and give us hard information.
And besides, Pat was just out in West Virginia getting his dowsing rod. That's why he had to grow the beard so he'd fit in. So, okay, anything else, Henry?
No.
Okay, Mr. Clayton?
Next step is to begin to put together a timetable to get to the taxation hearing later on this year in terms of communication and whatever other items need to be done. And I guess the approach is for me to work with Nathan and Bruce Huvard, and we'll see what we can put together, but we're moving forward down that path.
Okay. All right then, no need to go into executive session. Does anyone have anything else for the good of the order? Hearing none, everybody, this time I'll get it right. Everybody have a good Labor Day weekend. I'm sorry? Well, yes, I'm just going, I haven't gotten there yet. I was just wishing everybody to have a happy Labor Day. Now I need a motion to adjourn.
Trustee Chamberlain.
Well, do we need the motion first?
I'll move, first
Sorry.
off, I will make that motion.
And I'll second it.
Daphne wants to get out of here, guys.
And now I will say aye.
Thank you, Cheryl. Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Goldstein.
Aye.
Trustee Haber.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Jamerson.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. And again, have a great holiday.
Take care.